Hello interwebs, welcome to Let's Fix Computers. This PC is a custom build that has come in, which I believe is a no boot. Customer description of the fault was a bit vague, but I think my understanding was that the customer had been attempting to change out the CPU cooler for a water cooler that they purchased, only to discover that the water cooler doesn't fit. More on that in a minute. And so they then rolled back and reassembled as best they could. And now I think they said that it just drops into BIOS based on what it sounded like. So we're going to have a look at that. I have a suspicion the actual problem with this computer is going to be very easy to fix. But I think we're going to find lots of little things just wrong with it. Wrong screws in wrong places, missing screws, bits just that aren't where they should be and stuff like that. And so I think this is going to be a good opportunity for a conversation about just polish in a build, basically, just getting everything right. And I want to preface this conversation with a note that any and all criticisms that I have about this computer in this video don't come from a place of snobbery or malice. They come from a place of, this is something that could be done better. This is something that you can be looking out for when you're building computers or doing your first build. A lot of the time when I do videos where I start providing commentary on a custom build that I'm working on, when I say, oh, I don't like this, or this isn't very good, or this should be like this, sometimes I take flack in the comments section where people are just like, oh, well, that's their computer and they did their best, and stop being such a douche about it and stuff like that. And yeah, as I said, I just want to clarify that, yeah, not coming from a place of snobbery or malice. However, you know, if we're going to critique something, we have to point out things that are wrong with it. And if you never point out stuff that's wrong, then people won't know to look out for that. So that's what we're doing today. With all that being said, let's roll the intro and let's take a look at it. Now, before we power this thing on, we do need to actually plug the power cable into the graphics card. I sincerely hope that's not the problem with it. I'm hoping that that was disconnected because the customer was doing some diagnostics or something and just hadn't plugged it back in. If that's the only thing that's wrong with this, then this video is going to be real hecking short. But let's see. Alright, let's plug that in. And I'm just going to do a very quick sanity check just to make sure there's nothing screamingly in the wrong place. EPS connector isn't quite in properly. 24 pin is just about in properly. And everything else looks fine to me. We're missing a screw on the M.2 heatsink, but that's not the one that's holding it in, so that's fine. Alright. Okay, let's see what happens when I push the power button. I'm just going to double check that my HDMI cable is actually plugged in. Oh, there it goes. Alright. Okay, those fans are ramping up. Have we got anything? CPU core temperature 95. That's enough of that. Okay, so the CPU cooler... Oh. Yeah, okay. Probably should have checked that. No matter how many times you think you've just checked all the obvious stuff, there are certain things that you just take for granted. Okay. Right, I'm going to put this on its side now, and we'll go into the bench cam now we've done the initial look. Okay, let's just take this cooler off and just check what's underneath. Come on. Unhook. Unhook, please. I hate this cooler. It's not awful performance-wise, but the 2-pin hold-down clamps are just, it's terrible. Ancient design. Oh hey, this is AM5. Did not expect. Can you even use this cooler on AM5? I guess so. Oh my days. Alright, the graphics card is coming out. There we go. Alright, yeah, that paste is pretty donezo, and the cooler wasn't on properly. Let's clean that up and let's have another look at it. And also, I just want to have a look at this M.2 NVMe drive while we're here and just check what state that's in. As a reminder, the customer had tried to fit a different cooler before the computer came in, so this cooler has probably not been like this for very long. However, even if the customer had failed to put the clamp on properly themselves, the thermal paste still needs to be replaced here, so our actions remain the same regardless of the cause of this. Okay, that's a 7900. Not bad, not bad. Man, is this cooler big enough for a 7900? It's probably okay for gaming, but if you actually threw some stress tests at it, I wouldn't be confident. Alright, I guess I'll just put it on properly and just see what it does first. Alright, we've got a Crucial P3 Plus 2TB in there. That felt like it was in properly. I'm not sure it was locked in place though, because I didn't do anything with that lock. Fine. And motherboard screws, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. We've got 4 out of 6 motherboard screws. This motherboard just kind of hangs off the end in this case, which is fine. You know, those 6 will hold it in. These 2 are missing, and it's the wrong... I wouldn't say the wrong kind of screw, but yeah, they're kind of nasty looking screws, and it looks like half of them are cross-threaded. So we're going to put all of that right. That feels horrendous. Yeah, we'll have a look at those in a minute. Let's just see what else is wrong with this first. It's very tempting to just start straightening bits out as we go, but like, let's just figure out what we need to do with this first. Something extremely oh my days. There's something very strange about this cooler. This hold down bracket should kind of be loose, but it's just binding up, and I don't know why. Almost not surprised that the customer was struggling with that, because yeah, like, it's not a design thing, just this particular one feels weird. I've put these on and off many times, these coolers. It's a standard AMD box cooler. And yeah, that one feels odd. Okay, put the graphics card back in and try it again. Okay, so we've dropped back into BIOS, and now our CPU is not burning up anymore. So that's nice. Right, so we've got 64 gigs of RAM, a Ryzen 9 9700. The RAM isn't in XMP, or Expo rather, but also the BIOS has probably been reset, so we don't super care about that. So why isn't it booting anything? Is it seeing its storage? Yes, it is seeing storage. Okay, let's have a look at the boot order, or rather boot override, and see if it's seeing an operating system. No, there's nothing displayed in the boot override options. Is there even anything on that SSD? I'm going to get a Windows 10 flash drive and boot from a Windows 10 flash drive, and we'll get into a recovery environment and see if there's even anything on the SSD. Right, I've put in a Windows 10 flash drive and just hit restart. And from here, I'm just going to do Shift F10 to get to a command prompt. And let's start by doing disk part to get to the disk partitioner. List disk. Okay, so disk 2 is our SSD. So cell disk 2, select disk 2, list part. Okay, that partition structure doesn't look correct for a Windows partition structure. Is C even selectable? Yes. Oh, that's our boot. Okay, so the letter C, that's our boot flash drive, so that's not it. Have we got anything on D? EFI readme, that's my flash drive again. E. Okay, here we go. Here's customer data. And there's no Windows folder here, though. I tell you what this looks like. This looks like a data drive to me. This looks like, yeah, this looks like the game's data drive. So immediately I'm thinking, okay, has the customer forgotten to put their Windows SSD back in this? Okay, that's not terribly exciting in terms of repair. I think what we'll do is we'll have a look and we'll tidy this thing up. Oh, that fan is stalled at the back. We need to sort that out. This fan up at the top there is the 24-pin ATX keeps clashing with it. Needs to be sorted. Alright, I need to talk to the customer and find out if there is a missing SSD. Because there must be. There must have been a second SSD that's not been put in there. Like the Windows folder doesn't disappear by itself. And in the meantime, I'm going to just tidy the computer up, basically. So let's turn it off. And let's flip it over and have a look at the other side and just see what the cabling is like on this. Don't know how much, like, the back, if the cables are a little bit of a mess around the back, that doesn't really matter. That doesn't change how the computer performs. But we'll just check for crimes. Okay, well, that's not bad. So we've got a control box for the Lianli streamer, or strimmer, or whatever. Strimmer. We've got a control box for the Lianli RGB 24-pin cable, which there we go. There is a drive here. Okay, we've got a Team Group SSD here, SATA one, that just wasn't plugged in. That cable, that was hidden behind the motherboard. That's why I didn't spot it. There you go. That's why it doesn't boot up. Okay, so I'm going to get that plugged in. The rest of the cabling in here, you know, it's not a work of art, but that's fine. I don't really see a reason to mess with that, except for that 24-pin cable. We've got to see what we can do with that. Okay. All right, there we go. That plugs in there. Right, are these other... Yeah, those are fine. Okay. I'm going to push down the EPS connector properly as well. Just needed a little bit of a shove. Right, I'm going to take the graphics card back out just so I can change out the motherboard screws. Okay, so this is the Lianli strimmer, I don't know how you're supposed to pronounce it, cable. It's a 24-pin ATX extension lead with LED strips sitting over the top of it. So it's kind of a big thick boy. I have a love-hate relationship with this thing. As a set piece in a computer case, it looks kind of awesome. But as a product, it's kind of horrendous because it's just this big, huge, thick cable with two big black boxes on it and a wire going to it. And it has that entire control box to run it. And I think it's obnoxiously expensive. So, like, I love the idea of a cable that lights up, but this this implementation of it just seems kind of hideous, if I'm honest. So we need to get this into such an angle that it's not going to catch on those fans back there, because it really wants to do that in this computer, it seems. Okay, we're going to have another go at that. Let's get the motherboard screws sorted first. Right, so the control cable there, I think if I can get that around the back, under there we go, that keeps that hidden. And then I think this one's like a zip tie to hold it in the middle, because if it sits in the middle then it won't catch on the fan. I suppose I could probably just zip tie around there actually, yeah, that'll work. There we go. Then that can come around like that. Right, and that's... Sure. Alright. Cool. Let's have a look at these motherboard standoffs. So firstly, are these motherboard standoffs metric or imperial? So the biggest mistake people make with their motherboard screws is not checking if they should be using imperial or metric screws. So there's two major types of screw in a computer. We've got the black one is an imperial screw and has a coarse thread, and the silver one is a metric screw and has a fine thread on it. And computers use a mixture of both because reasons. And motherboard standoffs can be either. On most modern cases, they tend to be metric, which is an M3 thread. However, it could be either. These feel like they're supposed to be metric, so what was going on with this back one is the thread on that just mangled. Yeah, the thread on that is mangled. Let's take that standoff out and see if we can save it. So what's probably happened here is at some point someone's tried to put a imperial screw into this and just savaged the thread. I think a little bit of force to screw down an metric screw will probably straighten that out. Or I don't know if this is deep enough to get my to get a thing in there. Let's see. Here's an M3 tap. But I don't think this is deep enough for the tap to get in there. No. I think my best bet is to stick this in a vise and just force a screw into it. No, I'm just mangling screws. I'm going to replace that standoff. Let's find another one. That'll do. Right, I'm going to put in these nice fresh black M3 screws, so they should not blend in nicely. There we go. Now all those are nice and straight and true. I was just able to just put those in finger tight with a screwdriver. No fighting at all. Going to check those LEDs the right way around actually. The positive should be toward the back, which it was, yes. The LEDs were correct. Alright, that's all in place, and I've not done a complete rework on these cables or anything, but we've just made sure that's zip tied in place now, so this guy isn't going to wander around and fall into a fan and start making a noise. So that's good. Right, and now we've got the main SSD plugged in, it should boot. Cool, it's found a Windows 11 install and it's booting that. Oh, forgot to have a look at these fans to find out how they're being controlled, because it's quite a loud computer this, and I think it's these case fans that are running at full tilt. I can't see anywhere where they're plugged in though, so there must have been an extra RGB a fan control box in the back that I didn't spot. And we should see if that has some kind of PWM input on it, because if we can connect that to the motherboard, we can get those fans under system control so they're not just running at full speed all the time, and that'll quieten it down. Also, this thing is taking a really long time to boot. An SSD shouldn't take this long to start. It did look like some horrible team group thing though, so it might just be a really pants SSD. Yeah, there's a fan control box buried in the hard drive tray in there. So we should see if that has got an output somewhere we can hook up. I think I'm going to have to shut it down to get there though, because I'm probably going to need to unplug this and or pull out the cage. Unless this drive is like chock-a-block full or has some other excuse to be performing this badly, I shall probably advise that the customer replace it. Right, can I get to you? Yeah. Yeah, here we go. So in here you can see we've got that control box there. That's where all the fans are going back to. And also there's a Team Group SSD in there. QX Extra Large, I see. So more importantly, you can see we've got two cables. We've got that one there, and we've got a fan cable there. So these are motherboard connectors, and these would connect this control box back to the motherboard, so the motherboard can send its signals. It could send an ARGB signal that it repeats to all the fans, and it can send a fan PWM signal to control the speed of the fans. So we want to dig those wires out and get them connected up. Alright, this thing finally finished booting. My god. Right, password is en route. In the meantime, I'm going to get these other bits and pieces hooked up. So let's just cut this guy free. Right, shove the rest in there. It's a shame this Lianli control box doesn't have an ARGB output on it. It's just got the connectors for the Lianli proprietary stuff. I think any USB RGB controller like this should have just like at least one ARGB port on it, just so you can hook up just miscellaneous stuff. Like, there's no technical reason why they can't do this. And it would just allow people to just mix in other stuff, which you inevitably you have somewhere, you know. Now what I'm going to do, I'm just going to undo this motherboard screw, and I'm just going to run those cables underneath that standoff, because that'll just provide a little post to wrap them around to hold them in place. There we go. Right, sysfan 1, and let's have a look in hardware monitor. Now that's sysfan 1. Oh, it is giving us a speed reading. So those fans are running at 2000 RPM, which is why they're horrendously loud. So let's go smart fan mode, PWM control. There we go. And now we have fan control over the case fans. And I'm just going to dial in a what I would call a dirty quiet profile. So we'll just go minimum 30 degrees, 30%. Actually, let's see how low these things can go. Let's just find them low point. Right, so I'm watching the RPM up here, and we're looking for a low point of like 500 or 600. PWM fans can often go as low as like 300, but at that speed they're pushing basically zero air. So yeah. Alright, I think we can take those down to 20. Let's try 20. Gets us down to 5. Is that going to settle at about 500? Yeah, it's settling at about 500. Okay, let's do that for when we're really cold. And at 60% we're going to ramp up to 30. Sorry, at 60 degrees we'll ramp up to 30%. Then at 70 degrees we'll ramp up to 40%. And then by 90 degrees, we're going to go to 100%, just because that's getting... At 90 degrees, we want maximum cooling because we're in an over temperature scenario. So there we go. There's a dirty quiet fan profile. So at the moment, that's idling at about 650 RPM. And then when the CPU wakes up and is doing something, it'll probably go up into the 60s or 70s at least. And that should put us somewhere in the middle of the curve. And then we've got this big ramp on the high end of the temperature range. So if we start hitting high temperatures, those case fans are going to do what they can to help out. CPU fan, that is just on an automatic smart fan mode. We'll leave it as it is and just let it do as much as it can. I think this cooler is not going to cut it, but we'll do some tests for that in a minute to see if it's good enough. So that's fine. Right, that's all we need. Right, while I'm here, I'm going to set Expo. Let's go Expo Profile 1. What is Expo on this? Expo Profile 1. Oh, it's just 5600. It's 5600 mega transfers. It's CL46. Okay. There's no nicer way of putting it. This is just garbage RAM. Okay. That's unfortunate. What's on Profile 2? 5242, 5646. Yeah, no, this is just garbage RAM. Unfortunate. Okay, well, good luck. We'll switch that on anyway. That's probably going to be slightly faster than non-Expo. Let's see. Memory context restore, we want that enabled. That will just give us slightly faster post times. And I think that's about it. What BIOS version are we on? We should probably do a BIOS update while we're here. Build date is 8/24. Yeah, I'm going to grab a newer BIOS for this. So I'm going to go to the MSI website and grab the latest BIOS for this motherboard. We'll do that while we're at it. Support. BIOS. Latest BIOS is July 25. Brand spanking new. With a bunch of memory support and just other stuff. Cool. Download. And I'm going to put this the actual file here, this i1q0, which will be a versioning thing. The extension doesn't matter. It's a binary file. So we're going to copy that to a flash drive. This happens to be my Windows flash drive, but it's fine. It doesn't matter. Modern BIOSes are happy to upgrade from like NTFS or anything. If you're not sure, I would always advise FAT32, but for custom built computers like this, they're completely fine using just NTFS formatted drives. Right, I'm going to save and exit, and then we'll just reload. I probably should have done the BIOS update before customizing things, but cool. Right, now we're going to go mFlash, which is the MSI flash updater. And for this one, the computer powers off and then powers on into the update utility. All right, and we'll select our BIOS update file. And you can see on the bottom here that we're going up to this version, and the build date is going up by about 6 months or so. So that's nice to see. Do it. BIOS is updating. Let's leave it to run for a bit. Right, we're on the new BIOS revision, but it looks like we took a BIOS reset for that, which sucks. So I guess I'll do all of that configuration again. Thanks for nothing. Usually your BIOS settings get preserved between a version update, but right, this thing is booted up, but it is running like an absolute dog. And yeah, like you can see in Task Manager here, the system SSD is just pegged at 100%. This Team Group SSD is either garbage or it's knackered. Either way, it definitely needs to be replaced. Like, this computer is pretty high end. A Ryzen 7900, 64 gigs of RAM, that's a decent platform. There's no reason for it to just feel this nah. And there's not a doubt in my mind this SSD is the cause of that. This SSD should be replaced. How much space is he actually using on that 2 terabyte? Alright, we're using a decent amount of space. There is room to shunt Windows onto the 2 terabyte drive, but to be honest, I would replace this 500 gig Team Group with another 1 terabyte NVMe drive. The motherboard has got 2 NVMe slots, so I just put another 1 terabyte on there, move it all on there, ditch the SATA cables, and yeah, be done with it. There's a lot of junk on this as well. We've got like Wave browser and AVG secure browser and Opera GX and such. Throwing some shade with the last one there. So yeah, there's a lot of kind of junk stuff here that I would definitely ditch from this computer, but we're starting to get into personal preferences. None of that meaningfully affects the performance of the computer. However, if the CPU goes sky high to 90 degrees under load, that will affect the performance of the computer. So let's get some stress tests on here and see what it does. And while that runs, I'm just going to bring up that Lianli software that has a temperature monitor here, and we'll just see what the temperatures do while that's running in the background. I could open hardware info in the background, but you know, we don't need detailed output here. Just, you know, our bog standard temperature is fine. That's saying 60 watts and 50 degrees. I don't believe you. Yeah, we're kind of locked at 80% here. Is this CPU power limited? We're also only hitting 3 gigahertz all core. Yeah, there's some kind of power limit here that's massively holding this thing back. It must be in eco mode. That's certainly keeping the temperatures under control, but it's murdering performance. Let's drop back into BIOS and find out what that's all about. I'm not seeing anything that is controlling our CPU power levels. Everything's just on auto because it's just default. Yeah, maybe PBO has automaticed into something weird. So I'm going to do... I'm going to switch on PBO thermal limit 85. I'm just going to enable PBO and just see what that gives us. Same deal. Even with PBO enabled, we're locked at 60 watts and 3 gigahertz all core. Well, even when it was idling, it was sitting at 2.96. Okay, shout out to Deck from the Adamant IT Discord. I just popped in there to say, hey, I'm stuck in this weird low power state on a CPU. Anyone seen these exact symptoms before and can tell me what's limiting me, just to save me the trouble. And yeah, Deck popped back and said, check the Windows power plan. And it seems that our maximum processor state is set to 0%. So that's not set to 80%, which is what we actually seem to be limited to, but that doesn't look right. So I think someone's been messing with the Windows power plan. So I'm going to restore plan defaults. So for the record, I do not recommend changing with anything in these power plans. Set the high performance plan if you want, but personally I just stick on the balanced default, because everything is generally tuned for the defaults. But yeah, if you want to run the high performance one, sure, but don't mess with this stuff basically. Yeah, there we go. So now we've changed that. The default has set that to 100% again. So let's hit OK. There we go, 5 gigahertz. That's more like it. Okay, right, this SSD is still trash, which is the main issue here. However, our CPU is now actually boosting correctly. So that's that. Now we can run up a stress test again and we can actually check if this cooling is enough. So it's possible that the customer was attempting to limit the CPU temperature to keep things under control or something like that. However, whatever they were trying to achieve, they were doing it wrong. Don't mess with those settings. In a minute, we'll have a quick look in the BIOS and I'll show you how to control this properly if you do want to keep this under control. And then, there's so much that runs on startup on this computer. It's horrendous. It's such a nightmare to make this video because I'm trying to record something and something else keeps appearing on the screen. I'm like, heck off! Heck off! I'm trying to show something. Go away! Go! What is this? Ah! Ah! Ow, my brain! So if we want to set this CPU up properly, what we want to do is go into the overclocking settings and find advanced CPU configuration and then AMD overclocking. The exact position in BIOS will vary depending on what motherboard you're running, but there will always be an AMD overclocking menu somewhere. And if we go into here, in an ideal world, we want to set this with Precision Boost Overdrive enabled. This lets the CPU just boost as hard as it can based on the AMD profiles, the recommended AMD profiles. So this gives us a theoretical maximum stock performance and is how I would set up a computer out of the box. And then if we wanted to limit it, then what we can do is we can go into PBO and we could set a maximum. We can set eco set. I think we can go to advanced and just specify stuff. Yeah, so we can set in custom settings here, PBO limits here. Or what we could also do is just set a maximum thermal point where it will aim for that temperature. So for the time being, I'm just going to set it to enabled and just see how it behaves. Right, I think we're finally ready to do a temperature test. I've cut so much waiting out of this video where I'm just waiting for things to finish loading so I can close them and just try and run tests. This computer's running horrendously, and that's a mixture of just that garbage SSD and just so much junk installed on this. I'm hoping we're going to have an opportunity to try and look at that and clean it up, which is a delicate balance because some of this stuff is just personal preferences, which it's, you know, I would advise not running some of these tools that are running. Like, for example, we've got Lively Wallpaper. We've got an app to put a wallpaper on. And then we've got another app that makes the taskbar transparent. Like, I would advise not running those because, like, you've got two apps running in the background that are doing just eating CPU cycles. So it's just no, don't. However, those are personal preferences. And also, like, if we didn't have a garbage, if this computer was running as well as it should be, though, the footprint of those apps would be negligible. But yeah, again, the SSD is the big killer here. Right. Anyway, can we get Cinebench to run so I can check how the temperatures look? Here we go. Right, Cinebench is starting up, and we're now pulling 170 watts. Right, we're hitting 95 degrees, so we're thermal throttling. But it's banging up to 95 degrees, and it is managing its temperature there. So here's the thing, we don't really want to be at 95. So what I'm probably going to do is set PBO 85 or something like that, because 85 degrees is tolerable. You know, like, obviously in an ideal world we would be much lower than that, but we've got pleb tier cooling here. We're not going to get low temperatures. That's just not something we can do with the current cooling setup. However, 85 degrees is tolerable for an AMD box cooler, and then it will just throttle back as it will just power down as it needs to not go over that temperature target. So, however, now we're actually getting decent performance out of it. We're clocking up to sort of is looking for 4.5 gigahertz all core, which, considering the limitations it's under, is satisfactory. So yeah, the customer would get more performance with better cooling. However, also, again, the SSD is the problem here, not the cooling. So yeah, what score are we getting here? So we're scoring 27,147. Is that actually realistic? And the CPU should be capable of closer to sort of 29,000 points. So our Cinebench score is a little bit on the low side, but it's not devastating. Considering we're throttling back due to cooling limitations, that's not bad. So yeah, we could be doing worse than that. That's not cataclysmic. The next thing we need to do is we need to start doing software work on this. So firstly, see how long this list of stuff is? Most of this is enabled. Let's just sort by enabled, disabled. So we've got 3 things down the bottom that are disabled. However, all of that is enabled. So this is everything this is nearly everything that the computer is running on startup. This is why this computer feels so horrendous on boot. Now, we could go through and just right-click disable on a lot of these items, but I don't like doing that because it leaves just a lot of junk in the task manager. So I'm going to quickly fly through the correct places to remove this from. And we're going to do a little bit of cleaning up here just to try and make the computer feel a bit less awful when it boots. So I'm going to open up the registry editor, and I'm going to go to HKey current user, software, Microsoft, Windows, current version run. And this is all the stuff that's running on startup. And these are all the registry entries that are running on startup for the current user. So here's a really important thing. I'm not going to uninstall anything here. I'm not removing anything from the computer. I'm just telling it not to run on startup. If the customer really wants to use AVG browser for some forsaken reason, then they can still click on the AVG secure browser icon and launch that. We're just telling it not to open when they boot up the computer. So let's get rid of that. Discord is something that gamers use. They probably do want that to open, so I'm going to leave that alone. EA Desktop, Epic Games Launcher, and Steam. These ones are kind of tough to judge. It's going to depend on what games they're running. I'm going to be a bit heavy-handed here, and I'm going to leave Steam alone, but I'm going to tell the others not to run on startup. Most gamers have most of their games in Steam, and Epic and EA Launcher, that's going to be just for a couple of other games that they might run. Now, I'm making some assumptions here, but again, we're not removing these launchers, we're just telling it don't automatically run on startup. As soon as they try and launch a game that requires it, it will launch then. And because the computer will have finished booting up, it should launch pretty quickly as well. So yeah. LG Hub, they probably have an LG, that's Logitech, so they probably have a Logitech keyboard, mouse, headset, or a combination of all of those, and that's going to be doing some control over those peripherals, so I'm going to leave that alone. Edge, we do not need Edge to run on startup. OneDrive, are they even using OneDrive? Right, I've just looked by opening up File Explorer, and yes, the customer is using OneDrive, so we'll leave that alone. OneStart.ai, I don't even know what that is, but it sounds like awfulness. Go away. Opera GX. So, Opera GX, that's probably their main browser. Again, we don't need it to run on startup. You don't need your browser to run in the background. You can just open it when you want it. Go away. Signal RGB. I'm not sure what they might be using this for, because they've got the Lianli software there. Is Signal RGB actually set up? I don't even see Signal RGB running, so I'm going to switch that off. And there's nothing in this computer that it would be controlling. So I'm going to take that out of startup items. And voice mod, they might be using voice mod in Discord calls or wherever. So I'll leave that alone, because that might be part of their microphone setup. So yeah. It might look like I'm being a little bit arbitrary here, and that's because I kind of am. So that's current user. Now we're going to go to the same place in local machine. So software, Microsoft, Windows, current version, run. Right, Logitech Download Assistant. That is coming. Now, Logitech Download Assistant, that might be because they've got Logitech hardware, but also that comes in because of the keyboard that I'm using here. Annoyingly, when I plug this keyboard into a computer, Windows will automatically acquire the Logitech Download Assistant for it, which is annoying, so I'm just going to immediately remove that. Security Health, that puts the Windows Defender icon in the system tray, so I'll leave that alone. You can remove that if you want, but whatever. It's a fairly optimized app. So now I'm going to go to HK Local Machine, Software, WoW64, Microsoft Windows current version. And this is going to show us any 32-bit apps that are running on startup, and there are none. That's fine. So nothing going on here. This is often a place where you'll find the Java update service. So yeah. Right, so that's that. Now you'll notice our Windows Task Manager startup options have just gotten a lot shorter already. Let's do more. So next I'm going to right click on the start menu and go to computer management, and I'm going to go to task scheduler library, and we're going to do some destruction in here. Right, Apple Diagnostics, I don't think that needs to run on startup. If they have an Apple device, it's not interacting every time. Go away. AVG Secure Browser, go away. AVG Update, AVG Nonsense, go away. Just all of that can go away. Are they even running AVG Antivirus? No, they're not. All of that stuff is just for AVG's garbage browser. AVG Secure Browser. I would uninstall that. However, being a bit light here, I'm not removing stuff from the computer. I'm just telling it not to run on startup. Microsoft Edge. So the Edge Updater, this will run when Edge is actually being used. We don't need this to run on startup. So again, we can get rid of this. We don't need this to run in the background. Right, MSI Task Host. This is for the MSI RGB software, which might be useful because I connected the RGB cable so they could use the MSI software to do this. So I'll leave that alone because they might be using it. The NVIDIA app for the self-update, personally, I would not run the NVIDIA app, but I don't know if the customer is using it. They might be using it to record gameplay footage and stuff like that. So I'm going to err on the side of caution and say no. Next, we have a whole bunch of OneDrive stuff. OneDrive has a habit of making like multiple update entries. So I tend to axe all of these because OneDrive will just self-update itself anyway. OneStart. I think OneStart is junkware. I think it's one of the many browsers that's launching on startup. Should probably be uninstalled, but I need to talk to the customer first and just check a couple of things with them. Doesn't need to run in the background. Opera GX. Update assistant. Update. No. Just do the update when the program is running. Right. Postpone device startup toast. What are you doing? Actions. One time. That might be a Windows update thing. I'm just going to get rid of that. It doesn't need to be there. Alright. Okay, then in the folders we've got the Lianli Connect 3 launcher. So that's running the little streamer cable. I'll leave that alone. That's an RGB thing. Again, we can have arguments over whether all of the RGB software is junk or not, but the RGB software is at least doing something useful. We can argue over whether RGB is useful or not in the comments as you see fit. However, at least it's doing something, instead of these junk browsers that are just opening with a blank page and not doing something. So yeah, I'll tolerate a program that runs on startup if it's achieving a goal, it's doing something, you know. OneStart user. That's junk. I don't know what OneStart is, but I don't think it needs to run in the background. Cool. Right. We're done in there. Okay, so we've cleared a lot of items off of our startup apps now. There's still some stuff remaining, and for these things, at this point, I would just right-click disable them. Some of them are coming in through system services, and some of them might be using a couple of other legacy means, but we've axed enough that we're not leaving a huge amount of trash here. So let's have a quick look. So this update app here, that's the Discord launcher. We've got Steam there, OneDrive, Windows security notifications, Rainmeter. So this is fine. This is stuff we left alone. The Xbox app, I don't think that needs to run on startup personally. I'm going to right click and disable that. Spotify, again, I'm going to right click disable. That can be launched when it's desired. And also mobile services. I've just checked and phone link is not configured, so I'm going to disable that as well. Okay, so that's a little blitz that will just axe all of that stuff that was opening on startup. Some of it will still be there because it's stuff that I have deemed that the customer is almost certainly using actively. But all of those junk browsers and stuff aren't going to run on startup anymore. It's worth noting that you can also, like, for each app, for each one of those browsers, we could have dug into its settings and said don't run on startup as well. However, by going through Registry Editor and schedule tasks like that, we see more things, and also we see everything in one place, kind of. So it's just a more efficient way of doing it en masse. There are other apps you can use to dig into this, like I think there is an app that's literally called Startup Apps, or Auto Runs, I think it is. And that's another one you can use to really dig in under the bonnet to find stuff that runs on startup. However, this isn't a deep dive into servicing Windows. That's just a quick blitz you can do to just get a computer under control, which is what we've just done. I'm copying the user data over to a NVMe drive now. So this is the team group SSD out of the customer computer. So I've got that in a SATA hard drive dock. Then I've got an NVMe dock here. This one's by a brand called Acasis, who sent this one to me quite some time ago. This has been an absolute trooper, this dock. It's great. So that is plugged into Thunderbolt, and I'm just doing a transfer between using Macrium Reflect. You can use software of your choice. I'm using Macrium because once upon a time this was free, so I've got the old free version. The NVMe drive I'm using is this FICWAT FN501. It's a cheap drive, but I've used quite a lot of these and it's surprisingly good. The computer that I'm actually doing the transfer on uses one of these drives, and yeah, it's been great. It's fine. Right, now that imaging is done, I've just put that into the lower slot. You could swap it around. Traditionally, you'd put your boot drive in the upper slot. On this particular computer, and with these drives, it doesn't really matter. In an ideal world, your faster drive should be in the upper slot because it will probably have higher speed or lower latency to the CPU there, because the upper M.2 slot connects directly into the CPU. The latency doesn't really matter unless you're actually hammering your drives, like you're doing workstation / enterprise levels of I/O with your computer. Maybe you're running lots of virtual machines or something like that. And in terms of performance, it's only really going to matter if you're running like a Gen 4 or Gen 5 NVMe drive that is seriously fast. In which case, on certain motherboards, the lower slot might not be Gen 4 or Gen 5 as appropriate. So that's when it may or may not matter. On this particular system, with these drives, it doesn't matter. So I'll put it in the bottom slot. Right, let's turn on the computer. And I'm just turning this on from scratch, and I'll just show you the full boot sequence. I never really showed you the startup time beforehand, so we don't have a straight back-to-back comparison. But as you can see, this thing has started up. We're at login, and there's the desktop. Like, this thing is seriously fast now. We've still got to load up some stuff. There's the Lianli L-Connect software. There's Discord, there's Steam. And then finally, there's the little transparent taskbar thing. This was taking maybe 5 or 10 minutes while I was working on it, which is why I was sitting there going, bam, done. I think that was probably less than a minute. So yeah, that's why I was ragging on that SSD so much, because I knew that this kind of startup time and that kind of loading performance is what this computer should be capable of. So yeah. Right, that's it. I think that's all I got for you today. So yeah, not a lot of actual fault finding to do with this computer, but lots of just tidying up things. So I hope, if nothing else, this video can be a little bit of inspiration and insight into how a lot of custom built computers, even when they've got fairly decent looking headline specs like the 7900 CPU and stuff, and 64 gigs of RAM, they can have just a poor setup or just a couple of components just letting them down, that can result in just very lackluster performance for what should be a fast computer. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.